Story 1. The Haunting of Mbali's Village. I grew up in a small village in southern Africa, a place where the dense jungle encroaches on the edge of everyday life, and where legends breathe with the mist of dawn. My name is Lindiwe, and this is the story of how I came face to face with one of our most terrifying legends. Our village was steeped in stories, handed down through generations like a sacred torch. The most frightening was the tale of Mbali, a young woman who lived centuries ago. She was known for her beauty and kindness, but her life took a tragic turn. Mbali fell in love with a warrior from a rival tribe, and their secret meetings were the stuff of whispered scandal. When their affair was discovered, her lover was killed, and Mbali was shunned by her own people. Heartbroken and bitter, she took her own life, cursing everyone in the village as she did. The legend says that on moonless nights, her spirit roams the village, seeking those who would dare to betray or deceive. She's said to appear with a face so beautiful that you can't help but be drawn to her. But if you look too closely, you'll see that her eyes are hollow and filled with sorrow. Those who see her are said to be cursed, experiencing horrifying visions and misfortune until they meet a grisly end. One evening, I was sitting by the fire with my younger brother Sifo. Our parents had gone to the city for a festival, leaving us alone in the village. As the night drew closer, a storm began to brew, rattling the thin walls of our small hut. I tried to keep Sifo calm as the wind howled and rain battered the roof. The legend of Mbali was on my mind, a tale I had grown up with but never truly believed. It was around midnight when Sifo, tired of the storm, fell asleep on the mat beside the fire. I was just drifting off myself when I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. No one should be out there in such weather. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I approached the door and peered through the small window. Standing outside was a woman dressed in a tattered white gown. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was pale. I couldn't make out her features clearly, but something about her made my skin crawl. I opened the door a crack, but she didn't speak. She just stared at me with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, and the cold wind seemed to follow her. I could feel the temperature drop, and a sense of dread washed over me. I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands trembled as I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the storm. Sifo stirred, waking up and rubbing his eyes. "Who was that, sis?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound calm. "Go back to sleep." But I couldn't sleep. The image of the woman haunted me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I sat by the fire, trying to stay awake, but exhaustion soon overcame me, and I dozed off. I was jolted awake by a loud crash. I leaped up, heart pounding, and found that the door had been shattered. The woman was gone, but a strange feeling lingered in the air. The storm had ceased, but the silence was unnerving. I grabbed Sifo and we hurried outside, hoping the worst was over. The village looked different. The usual warmth of home was replaced with an eerie chill. I walked through the village, noticing that everything seemed out of place. The huts were strangely empty, and the usual sounds of life were absent. Then, I saw her again. Standing in the center of the village, Mbali's ghost was unmistakable. Her face was beautiful but twisted in a permanent expression of sorrow. Her eyes were dark voids, reflecting nothing but despair. As I approached, I realized with horror that the ghostly figure wasn't just a legend, it was real. Her gaze met mine, and I felt a wave of terror like never before. In my panic, I tried to remember what I had heard about how to deal with her. It was said that offering her forgiveness, acknowledging her pain, might break the curse. I stood there trembling and spoke to her with as much compassion as I could muster. "Mbali," I said, "I know you are hurt and betrayed, but we are not the ones who wronged you. Please, find peace and leave us." She didn't move or speak. Instead, the darkness around her seemed to deepen. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and I turned to see Sifo looking up at me with fear in his eyes. Suddenly, the storm roared back to life, and a gust of wind knocked us off our feet. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was Mbali's hollow eyes watching us, her sorrowful wail echoing through the storm. When I woke up, the storm had passed, and the village was back to normal, though it was eerily quiet. Sifo was beside me, unharmed but shaken.
Story 2. The Haunting of My Village. I'm Kwame, and I live in a small village surrounded by thick, dark forests in West Africa. People in our village always talk about the forest being haunted. They say spirits and strange creatures roam there at night. I never believed these stories, just thought they were old tales meant to keep us kids in line. One night, I decided to prove everyone wrong. I took a lantern and went into the forest, planning to stay until midnight. As I ventured deeper, the trees seemed to close in and the shadows grew longer. It was eerily quiet, except for the sound of my footsteps crunching on the leaves. When the clock struck midnight, I heard a soft, eerie wail. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, but the sound grew louder. Strange, flickering light appeared between the trees. Despite my fear, I followed it. The light led me to a ghostly figure, a woman in a tattered white dress. Her face was pale and her eyes were hollow. She floated above the ground and her wail was so mournful it made my blood run cold. Her hand reached out toward me, and I felt an icy chill penetrate my bones. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move. The woman's ghostly form suddenly vanished, and I was left alone in the dark forest. I sprinted back to the village, my heart racing. The next morning, I found out that the spirit I saw was the ghost of a woman who had died years ago while searching for her lost child. They say she appears to those who venture into the forest alone at midnight. I've never doubted the stories again. Now I understand why the elders warn us to stay away from the forest at night. Some mysteries are best left alone.